Welcome to the Talent with Purpose Project podcast. If you dream of making it in film, fashion, television, or theater, you're in the right place. Join us as we connect with today's top talent agents, managers, and casting directors, as well as performers who started out just like you, bringing you insider insights and expert guidance to help you shine in the performing arts. Brought to you by Gold Talent International, this podcast is your gateway to success, from Hollywood to Las Vegas and beyond. Are you ready? Let's go.
Really very excited about today's guest. We have John Stevens, who's one of the most sought after coaches internationally. This is an actor who's also been very involved with dance and theatre, with many accolades behind him. He has worked in major productions such as Peter Pan, to Annie, and to Broadway and off-Broadway. He's worked on Carnival Cruise Lines and with major names in Broadway as well as Las Vegas, and has choreographed many shows in New York and again on Broadway. He clearly has a purpose in everything that he does, which is why his school called Act with Purpose exists. He offers a unique perspective of the industry in that he provides business coaching with artistic guidance. And today we'd like to welcome John onto the podcast and say thank you very much for being with us, John.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here, Paul. And I really appreciate the intro. It's always so unnerving and so uncomfortable to hear your life kind of flash before your eyes.
All right, John. Nick and I were saying exactly the same last week or something, going, we've got so much reference and so much process behind us and so much experience behind us that we tend to forget what that is because you're living in that energy all the time. But it is inspiring to see what one has achieved and what was done and what led up to this particular point of one's life and what one does. So let's talk about that. What is the actual purpose that you have? What inspires you as a person to get up in the morning and do what you do, which is change lives?
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I think purpose is something that has always come to me. It's not something that I've gone out to seek out. To me, it's kind of unfolded and presented itself in different phases of my life. But I will say, very, very early on, I started teaching dance at the YMCA in New York City, up on the Upper West Side. And it's the very famous YMCA. It's the 93rd Street YMCA, and they have all kinds of different programs. But I ran their dance program. And fun fact, I actually did hip hop aerobics back in the 80s and taught an aerobics class too. But I think there I was teaching dance, and there was, I had such a great time. I was teaching throughout the summer and that sort of thing. And when I announced actually that I was going to be leaving and going to work on Carnival Cruise Lines, there was this young boy that came up and he hugged my leg and he just sobbed. And I think that was the first time I realized my impact on a young person's life. The mom came up to me and said, "You have to understand, you're the only male in his life that he's ever opened up to and felt like he could trust." So I think that was a big aha moment for me, is to realize the responsibility that comes along with coaching, that we're connecting to people's lives in a very, very personal way that sometimes we aren't even aware of. And so for me, that was a really big lightning rod in my life that was like, this is something to pay attention to. So I went off, I did Carnival Cruise Lines. I came back, I went into Annie with Joanne Worley from Laugh-In. and John Shuck from Macmillan and Wife. And then from there, I went into Stephen Sondheim's Follies and I performed there. And there was just one show after another, after another, after another, until suddenly I was in my 30s. And I was like, oh, um, and I was in Peter Pan, which was a very physically demanding uh, production. And I just thought to myself, I cannot drop down to the floor and pop back up, 8 shows a week for much longer. And so I was living in Miami at the time, and I needed to find some work. So I was still choreographing a few things up in New York City. I did the launch of M&M's for the color purple, and different kinds of big product launches. I think that was when I also was choreographing a fashion show at the Met. And anyway, I was in Miami and I saw this job posting and I wanted to find something local, and it was for an acting coach. So I went and I interviewed at this school, and I never assume that I'm the right fit for anybody. I have remained, I think, very humble throughout my career, because one minute you're on top, the next minute you can be struggling. So I've never taken that for granted. But I went in and I was really worried. I said, I don't know if I'm qualified, to teach. And they looked at my resume and they looked at me and they said, you do realize you're overqualified, right? We've never had an instructor with your credits and with experience in both dance, singing, and acting to come through our doors and be able to approach this from a very real sense. So anyway, I started off as a substitute teacher at this school, and they wanted to see if I would be the right fit. And I went into this class and I said, so tell me, what have you been learning? And they all looked really bored. And they said, we've been going over slating for 6 weeks. I said, oh, okay, great. Well, slating is really important, let's see what you got. And they started to slate and they were awful. And so I said, okay, this is what we need to do. And so I said, okay, what else do you guys want to know about? Well, we were going over our resume. So I took out my resume and I showed them how to put together a resume. And they're like, this is what we wanted. So anyway, at the end of this 1 hour class, they went out to the studio owner and the studio manager and said, we don't want the substitute teacher to come back. We want John to stay. Which I always felt bad about. That was not the intention, of course, that I went in there, but it was also very flattering. And I started to once again pay attention to the signs in my life of where the path that I was kind of being led down. So I started coaching for this company, and pretty soon we had success stories. People were booking in television and film, which they'd never really had before. So that was a huge feather in my cap. And so I don't know that I sought out coaching. Coaching kind of found me. And here we are 30 years later. And I still wake up every day excited about what I get to do, excited about the projects I get to work on, and excited about the people that I get to work with. And I think for me, the reason that feed is there, and if we go back to purpose, is that I've realized my purpose is to share my personal experience with acting and my relationship to acting. And so that comes from a very personal place for me. And I've shared this story with you and Nico, I think, before, but I had a rough time as a kid, and I lost my grandfather, who was my favorite person in the world, to suicide. And after that, I really struggled mentally. He was the one person in my family that I really felt a close connection to, and I felt like he saw all of me, the performer side of me, the curious side of me, the goofball side of me, the serious side of me. He really just was a very special person to me. I had a rough time after his death, and my parents, in particular, my mom, was really phenomenal about putting me in a lot of different programs. I did everything from ice skating to basketball to Boy Scouts to you name it. And I think my mom was just trying to help me find something that would help me process and help me uh, find myself. And for me, that was dance. I started taking dance very young. Um, and that kind of got me interested. And people said, oh, well, you should try acting. And so I started going into a local studio here in Seattle, where I am right now. And it was the Seattle Actors Guild. And suddenly I started to understand my story and understand my grandfather's story. And I was able to process the pain through drama. And so for me, the going back to the relationship I have with acting, acting very seriously saved my life. It was the thing that became my focal point. Rather than the pain I was going through, I was focused on the scenes I was working on. I was focused on the skills. I was focused on building my confidence. I was focused on building my audition skills. And it really gave me a purpose and a focus. And so that's what I carry over today. I still have that same passion, and my hope is that I can pass on some of that knowledge that has helped me through my life to other young performers.
Oh, that's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
John, a question that's coming out of what you are sharing there at the moment is we see within the people that we are working with that there's often an aspect of the self that is missing.
Mm.
And they've got it all done well for themselves. They've got their process together, but there's something missing within their entire structure of who they are as a person. And I name it as something that's missing on a spiritual level, that they haven't found themselves spiritually, that the soul is not speaking within who they are. Do you think that life itself is an act?
Ooh, yes. Yes, I do. I think that that's a brilliant question, and it's a even though it's a complex question for me, it's a very simple answer. Yes. When I look back at the story of my life and the role that acting has played, acting is almost like another character in the story of my life. And so, yes, I feel like there is a spiritual disconnect. I think what's interesting about the arts, not just acting, not just dance, not just singing, but any arts, is that it does attract people who are looking for understanding. And so I think as long as you come into this knowing that the side effect from taking an acting class or taking a singing class, a modeling class, a singing class, or any kind of arts class, you're going to have some sort of self reflection opportunity that leads to growth. Um, each week, uh, students share different breakthroughs that they've had through working on a scene that maybe for some reason is very triggering to them or hits very close to home. Then there are students that are really finding their confidence and realizing like, hey, this is the place for me. In terms of spirituality, I think it's an interesting topic to bring up. I think it also ties into self-confidence as well. I think the actors that I have worked with that are doing the most compelling work have discovered something about themselves in the process. And they have, all of them have one thing in common. They've stopped trying to please the casting director or please the director or producer or writer.
Mm.
And they are simply focusing on the story and bringing themselves to the story and just leaving it as that. I can't tell you how many times actors have come to me and they said, John, as soon as I stopped caring, you told me, stop going in and trying to please the other person. Just come in and be yourself and share your vantage point, your perception of the role and bring everything you have into it. And when they do, and they stop caring about the outcome, and they just focus more on the output, what they're putting out there, rather than the outcome, that's when the results start to happen, because you're not pushing for the result. You're focused on doing really good work.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think that's one of the realities of success is we can focus on the work, but unless we also understand the output within the self, we
Yes.
are never going to have that ability to be fully real, fully authentic within who we are.
Yes. And I do feel like there's a lot of people who come into this seeking validation, not just from casting, even from me as a coach and from their agents, from, casting directors, producers. But as soon as you do focus on, I want to put the best possible audition out there, and you just focus on putting out the work rather than, waiting for somebody to label it as good or bad or indifferent. We need to just do the best work that we possibly can. What I've noticed is a lot of actors wait to get a callback or to be booked in order to say that it was a successful audition. But really, a successful audition is you doing the best that possible job that you can within the framework of the story. That's all we can do. That's all we have control over. So I always try to challenge people to, actors in particular, to think about putting out the best possible work, be proud of the work, and then the work stands on its own. You don't have to wait for approval from a casting director or an agent. I had this advice actually back when I was living in New York City. I think I was 24 years old or something like that, 24, 25 years old. And I went into audition for a project and they really liked me. And they said, okay, we want you to come back tomorrow, but we have some advice. And I was like, okay, sure. Don't look so desperate. And I carried that with me. I was like, okay, that must be what I'm putting out there. And to be fair, I had $10 in my bank account in New York City. That doesn't go very far. So when I say I needed this job, I needed this job. So in all fairness, I probably was desperate. I wasn't acting desperate. I was desperate, but it wasn't attractive. And so I went in the next day and they said, we want you to come in here like you've got $10 million in the bank. You don't need the job. You're just here to do, this, choreography and the song. I went in and, did a much better audition, but I will never forget that advice because it stuck with me to think about how, what kind of energy I'm putting out there in the audition beyond just, doing the read and doing the choreo and the song. What kind of energy, how am I being perceived? And oftentimes I've had a misunderstanding of myself and not realizing what I'm putting out there. And that was a big wake up call for me.
Oh, that's fascinating insight into the process. Yes, and that $10 in the bank account process seems to
Yes.
go along with many parts of life within the industry. So one has to often say, I do this for the love of it, not for the money of it. And I think that when you focus on that work, things can change because one can be more open to it.
Absolutely, 100%.
Mm. And you mentioned humility earlier that you've carried with you. And then we've brought up words like confidence. How do we build confidence and stay humble? It may be a bit of a strange question because I can see the link in it, but often there's an arrogance that comes with people that they mistake for confidence, or they're trying to exude confidence, but it comes over as a sense of arrogance. What do you feel about that?
You know what? That is a really good question. I think I think for me, I think so many different parts of my life have always been about balance and trying to balance out. Yes, uh, not necessarily walking into a room like you own the place, and I think the difference is, walking in and feeling like you own the place versus walking in and feeling like you belong. And so, I think there's a big difference between those two. Um, I never want to walk into the room like I own the place, but I do want people to know that I feel comfortable, I know my worth, and that I feel competent to do the job that they're asking me to do. So I think that is a really interesting question, and I think it's something that actors do need to keep a check on. I think it's one of the things that I've struggled with throughout my entire life, not just in acting, but just in everyday life. The idea of how we view ourselves versus how other people view us is sometimes very different. I'll give you a for instance. I was sitting uh, here at the grocery store, and I was in line to get my groceries, and I hear this voice behind me, and it was somebody. It was here in my local town where I grew up and where I went to high school. I hear this voice behind me going, "Ugh, is that John Stevens? I never liked him." And I was
Wow.
like, "Oh, wow, okay." So I'm trying to like think of like how do I coyly look behind me to see who it is, right? So I kind of, found a way to, figure out, okay. And I saw who it was, and it was somebody from high school that I actually really liked. So I was kind of dumbfounded and a little confused by that. So I started to walk away, and I thought, you know what? I think this is a learning moment. I need to stop and I need to like address this. So I put my bags down and I waited for her to, finish, checking out. And she started to walk by me, and I said, "Hey," and I called her by her name. I said, "Hey, I couldn't help but overhear you in line. And I just want to take an opportunity. If I've done something to cause you harm, or if I've hurt your feelings, or if I was rude, or if there's something that I need to take ownership of, please let me know." And she goes, "Oh, you were always so stuck up." And I was like, "Really? Okay, so tell me like what you never talked to anybody. You just thought you were so above everyone else." And I said, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, so I'm really glad that we're having this conversation because let me tell you where I was at." I was out in high school, and so for me that presented certain issues, especially in the early '80s. So I was very quiet. I kept to myself. I was extraordinarily shy, and I just didn't want to cause any waves. So I kind of kept to myself. So the perception was my shyness was that I was stuck up. And it was a really, really interesting thing because now ever since that conversation, I've been trying to be more aware of how I come off when in reality, I am a very private person. I am kind of quiet. People don't believe that because they see me on stage or they see me in videos and things like that. But in real life, I'm actually very quiet and I kind of keep to myself. I have my public personality, but then, and when I'm around my family and my friends, I'm just John. And so I think, a big part of what you're talking about is understanding our perception versus the reality of who we are. um, and I think that this is something that a lot of celebrities end up having to kind of juggle as well. But I think the best advice I can give actors is just learn to be self-aware, learn to take ownership of maybe I am perceived that way. That doesn't mean that they're wrong or you're wrong or anything else. It just, this is how it's fact, right? This is how you're being perceived. It's something to pay attention to.
Very deep points of conversation indeed. I often
Yeah.
get the take in life that people look for a tribe or a similar way of thinking around themselves, which attracts people to them so that it can justify their way of thinking. I try and avoid being stuck into that box or
Yes.
being put into, oh, you belong to that tribe only, whatever that tribe is. And, coming in from Africa, I can't say it's a tribal process, but there's definitely a way where people either fit into the tribe of like-mindedness or they don't. And I don't often subscribe to the being stuck in like-mindedness because then we all have to think the same and we all have to respond and react the same. So here's a question I have right now. In your company, Act with Purpose, as a school and as a process which is inputting into people's lives who want to be in the industry, who want to be in the world of arts and entertainment. I know that you are working with several other coaches. It's on your website, actwithpurpose.ca. Did you choose those coaches or did they choose you?
You know what? I think a little bit of both. There's definitely a buzz about Act with Purpose and about what we're doing. People are excited about it. We are going through a bit of a growth spurt right now. And I'll give you a little inside scoop. Actwithpurpose.ca is about to change. We have a new website that's going to be launched next week, most likely, and it's actwithpurpose.world. Because we have started to with wonderful people like yourself and Nico, we have started to really raise eyebrows in other areas, not just North America now. So I have been afforded the wonderful opportunity to coach one of your clients, Oswald, in Italy. And I've also had the opportunity to coach a number of people in Croatia, the UK, and people are reaching out from India and Nepal. We've got a really, really neat fan base. I had somebody just reach out recently from Germany who wanted me to come and do some workshops there. So it is growing, and people are definitely starting to pay attention to what we've created. The coaches, and I'd say it's really more of a community. It's not just the coaches that are coming to us. We have wonderful coaches that are coming to us, but we also have casting directors. This weekend, later on today, in fact, I'm preparing a bunch of actors to meet with Carmen Kotick. Carmen was the casting director for the best Christmas pageant ever, Chucky, all kinds of different movies. She's done just a little bit of everything. And she's one of the few casting directors in Canada that we can say has cast in every single province. She's worked just all across the country, quite literally, and is very well known, very well respected. And also, I think one of the things that I appreciate the most is she's very kind. She's kind to actors. She's kind to her community. She's kind to the industry. She's just a really wonderful person. So we have people, that are coming to us, agents, casting directors, producers, writers. Every time I'm in Los Angeles, I have meetings at Netflix, which is really exciting. So we have a fan base. We have a really, really nice group of people. And I think the reason that people are appreciating the training that we're giving is number one, it's accessible. It's not overpriced or making huge promises or anything like that. It's very straightforward. We want it to be all about trust and building a community that goes beyond just me. So accessibility financially, accessibility through our classes are primarily on the internet. So we do that. I am traveling and doing in-person workshops as well, but I do love that I can jump online and I can be coaching somebody in Italy. I can be coaching somebody in a very rural part of Canada, or a very urban part of a different city. So it can. I love the accessibility of it. That's number one. Number two is the message that I think that we are creating is one of inclusivity, not just for the purpose of inclusivity, but the fact that we're understanding that everyone's story adds to our story. And by understanding other people's stories, it actually helps us better understand our own. And so people are coming through our program, not only getting the skills that they need, but they're getting a better sense of themselves. So that's a huge part of it. The other reason that I think casting directors, agents, directors, producers, and other folk are coming to us is because we have a very unique point in what we're doing. There's a lot of schools that just teach you the art of acting, and then there's a lot of schools that teach you, the marketing side. I think the reason Act with Purpose is doing so well is we've got this kind of 50-50 formula where if you are really great at doing the art, but you don't know how to get a job, you never get a chance to use your art. And if you're really good at marketing, you can get the job, but you can't perform the job very well because you haven't had the artistic side of the training. Then you kind of, either way, you're not going to be able to fully realize what you have to offer in this industry. So we really try to meld the two together. We spend part of our time talking about the arts. Here's how you break down your script. Here's how you can act. Here's what you need to know. Here's the information. The other half of the class is you've got to know how to do a proper self-tape. In today's market, if you can't self-tape properly, it doesn't matter how great your acting is, casting won't see you. And I hate to say this because casting is very kind, casting is wonderful, but they're not always very creative. And it's not really their fault. It goes to the fact that we have to kind of get past this idea that casting directors make the final decision in casts. Casting directors find the best people and then put them in front of the director, the producer, and all the other, money, the network. So I think that that's one of the reasons why Act with Purpose has done so well is this focus on, okay, great, you've got this skill set. Now let's have you do a self-tape. Okay, this is where the problem is. Or, hey, you do a great self-tape. You've got the great lighting, you've got the great background. But now for you, we need to focus on the art side. You're missing certain beats. You're missing certain opportunities in a script to show off what you can do. So I think that that's kind of our big secret sauce, if you will, is that it's not just acting, it's marketing, it's understanding social media, it's understanding the casting process, it's understanding the structure of a script. It's so many different aspects that come into a culmination. And once you have all of those pieces, then you can build out the full puzzle. the I think the hardest thing for actors is we've got a lot of actors that are trying to, put their puzzle together of their acting journey, and they're missing a lot of pieces. And until you invest in going out and collecting those missing pieces, you aren't going to be able to put together a really full picture of what your career could be.
These are incredibly deep points to absorb and to understand the importance of the process. And it's really the same in any parts of life where one wants to succeed. If one is studying to say to be a lawyer, doctor, or any one of those supposed professional levels of work to get a career, the arts needs that kind of input as well. We do find very much that most people do not understand that they're a business and they have to sell
Yes.
themselves as a business, and who they are and what they offer is the actual product. It's nice to hear you talk about combining, the coaching with business guidelines and how to actually present all of that. Because at the end of the day, I mean, the world of arts and entertainment is the world's biggest money spinner. And if you want to be in it in a successful level, then you have to understand what spins money. And that's
Yes.
what needs to be presented. You need to be able to sell yourself as a product, not just as a talented individual. And I come back to that point as often when we've done live auditions, we'll get this beautiful young talent appearing, all the enthusiasm and inspiration in the world and passion in the world, but they are bringing Granny along with them, who has chosen a song for them that she loves, and does not represent that person or their ability on any level. And in fact,
Yes.
and try and suggest you shouldn't be singing this song because of its structure and its content. It has a completely
Right.
different meaning when an adult listens to it or watches it. And then Granny gets very upset about that
Yes.
particular process because we tell them to come back with another song at another time and we'll make time for that. But they're not impressed with it because it's not Granny that's singing it, it's her grandchild that's singing it. But at the end of the day, the product has to be the grandchild.
100%. I have to tell you this story because I think it's you'll appreciate it. Back when I was coaching in Miami, I was pre-screening a bunch of people to go in and meet with a casting director. And so anyway, this young child came in and she was 6 and she was adorable. Oh my gosh. And parents had dressed her, in this beautiful gown and everything, and just they showed up ready to really try and wow us. And so the audition rooms back then had a really narrow window so parents could see what was, happening in the room, could hear and everything. But it just allowed for a little bit of sound separation and that sort of thing. So I was in the room with the child filming. Parents were in the window watching and rooting for her and all that kind of stuff. And so I finished the little commercial and I said, okay, we're all set. And they go, oh, no, 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 no. She has a song for you. And I was like, oh, okay, great. So they were like, okay, honey, you ready? And she's, yes, I'm ready. And she put her hand on her hip and she put her hand out like this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a little teapot, right? So I'm all ready for I'm a little teapot. And then she starts going, my hips, my lovely lady. And she starts talking about her humps and her, like, oh, it was the most inappropriate song choice ever. But she did my lovely lady lumps at 6 years old. And mom and dad were just clapping and so excited. And I said, that was so cute. Don't ever do that again. Please don't make your child go in and sing, suggestive song lyrics like that. That was so inappropriate. Cute because you were there and you were thrilled with it, but never again. Please don't ever do that. That makes us very uncomfortable.
and and so the whole family's performing arts dream just had to change and alter right there and then.
Exactly, exactly. And I think, I always, as much as I joke about these things, parents are going into it with good intentions. They think it's cute, they think it's funny, they think it's, no one's actually trying to put anybody in danger. But at the same time, I do like to make sure that safety is a really, really big thing for me. I've worked in studios that I did not feel like were adhering to any kind of moral compass or guidelines. And that's another reason why I created Act with Purpose, is because I finally got to have my school. It's not been built by anybody else. It has not been influenced by anybody else. It is 100% my vision. And one of the things that is really, really important to me is creating a safe space for everyone. That's one of the reasons why I do work with persons with disabilities, is to make sure that the school is accessible in every possible way. We've got some really exciting news on that front too, in terms of Unstoppable Tracy was just recently featured in a commercial, and she's on hold for another one. So we're really excited that she's getting out there and getting booked and getting seen. And then another one of our young ladies with Down syndrome just recently booked the lead in a really great feature film that shot in Calgary last month. So we've got some great things that are happening on that front, in making sure that there's nothing about us without us, making sure that persons with disabilities have the opportunity for proper representation in television and film.
And really exciting to see all of those things happening. When
It
you
is.
start from the beginning and you watch some young talent, and when I say young, it can be of any age, it means it just hasn't got much experience. That's what I refer to young talent as. And just watch their journey unfold and where they can end up and the potential that they achieve within themselves, for me, is life changing. It's what we were saying right in the beginning. Why do we do these things? Um,
Exactly.
we can say it's for the love of it, but it's far deeper than that. It's just knowing that another human being has achieved their potential um, strikes very deep for us as to our purpose in the industry and what we are
A
working on.
100%. Yes.
Right, so just a little bit of homework for a second, please, John. I just need to remind our viewers and listeners that if you are with us, thank you very much for watching the podcast. Please subscribe. Please leave us a comment, even if it's just a basic comment to say hello, because the algorithms love all of that. And we would love to have our podcast inspire a lot of other people. So your participation in that really helps us to spread the news and to spread the podcast and to share with many other people who may be looking for answers and some insights as they go along. So, Mr. John Stevens from Act with Purpose, all the way in Canada, we've had a wonderful chat today, and thank you very much for being here and sharing all of that. Just as a last comment, we've nearly been on for 50 minutes. Can you believe that? Just as a
Can't
last
believe it.
comment,
I can talk a lot.
it's so exciting. It really is wonderful just to have a guest who can express and just share and just be in their heart. And I think that's so important. What tips could you offer somebody, a budding or aspiring actor who's just starting out?
There's so much. I am a big believer in journaling, in whatever way, shape, or form that is. Some people do it digitally with voice notes and things like that. But I do think that there's value in marking your journey. And that's really what I think of journaling being. It is a journey. So a journal makes sense. I have had years where I thought, gosh, I just don't feel like I'm getting any traction. Am I moving forward? And what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll look at my journal from a year prior, and I'll see where my head was at, what my thoughts were, what I was struggling with. And I go, oh my gosh, that's what was my big struggle back then. Look at what I'm doing now. So a journal is a great way of, number one, self-reflection and of self-discovery. But also for me, it was a huge motivator. It was like, okay, I am moving forward. We don't always see it, right? It's like when we're away from family for a while and we come back, and that little nephew that we had that was, up to our knee is suddenly up to our shoulder, right? We don't see the growth if when we're kind of there every single day, but you go away and you come back and you notice the growth, right? Same thing with journaling. We don't always see the growth in our acting career or in our personal lives. And that's another thing that I think is a wonderful side effect from these acting classes is I've had so many people come to me and say, John, I feel like my relationships are better. I'm communicating more clearly. I'm understanding when I'm being manipulated, and I understand kind of the intention behind words with a different sort of mindset since taking acting classes. So all of that stems back to journaling and keeping track of your progress and keeping track of your thoughts. I think there's a lot more value in journaling privately like that than there is in posting everything on the internet, on social media platforms. A lot of people think, "Oh, that's my journaling. I'm journaling my career." No, you're putting something out there that is for public consumption. There's a difference between what we put out there for public consumption versus what we do with our inner thoughts. And that's where journaling is really, really powerful. So if I had to give one little piece of advice, journal. Keep track of yourself and keep track of your thoughts and be kind to yourself.
Well, that's some good insight. Thank you very much, John Stevens. Thank you for joining us today on the Talent with Purpose Project podcast. See, I'm getting it right, just bit by bit.
It is a mouthful, all that alliteration.
Yeah, we sometimes say we'll do TWP, but does anybody really understand that when we are looking for purpose? We don't look for perfection here, we look for purpose, because we know purpose
100%.
is something that has great potential. So thank you very much. Thank you for sharing with us. What I'm getting out of today's conversation is that being someone in the performing arts is actually being part of the evolution of humanity and growing humans as they possibly can within their full potential. And thank you for allowing us to be part of your community and for sharing all of that absolute wisdom and inspiration with us.
Well, thank you, Paul, and good luck to you and Nico as you guys continue to help out your community and help out your clients. I really believe in everything you're doing as well.
Oh, we really appreciate that. Thank you so much for touching our hearts, and we wish you a happy of happiest days.
All right, you as well. Take care, and I'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you very much. Bye.